John Ross, all the way from Canada. How you going, John?
I'm fine. How are you? All the way down there.
Oh, well, it's actually really cold here at the moment, so it's not the typical Australian weather where we're at the beach, which is a bit disappointing, but it's all right.
Okay, well, we're getting the Australian weather right now then.
Are you? I'm a bit jealous. Do you have any
Yeah.
beaches near you?
Yeah, tons of them. Yeah, I'm in Nova Scotia, so it's more or less an island. So we're surrounded by the Atlantic Ocean, so there's lots of beaches.
Oh, that's not fair. Hey, look, start things off. I was watching some of your videos on YouTube, actually all of them, and I found a comment on one of them that just made me like laugh a lot. And it said that Canada needs some more drugs and amusement parks, so the guitarists can't focus so much on finger picking because some of the guitarists that come out of Canada are just too good. Is there anything you're finding hard, or have you just got it all down packed, the whole guitar thing?
Well, it's interesting because I guess, in Canada, for whatever reason, the whole acoustic guitar thing really, it really took off back, I guess, you could say, oh, I don't know, I guess in the folk scare of the 60s. But the thing is, we had some really, really unique voices emerge out of it, like people like Joni Mitchell and Neil Young, and it was sort of more than our fair share. But then really things started to change in the 70s and 80s with people like Bruce Cockburn really focusing on the virtuosity of the guitar as well as being a songwriter. And for a long time when I started out, I was really the only full-time, mostly instrumental fingerpick guitar player in Canada who was like out there full-time touring. But in the last 10 years, there's been this huge emergence of a huge number of people and a wave sort of inordinately to the population, certainly. So I'm very happy to see what's happened. It's really exciting.
Definitely. So I was chatting to Callum Graham a couple of weeks ago, and he spoke a lot about you. You've been a massive influence in the journey he's taking. What do you look for in a guitarist when you take them under your wing, like you kind of took Callum?
Well, in the case of Callum, I first met him when he was about 14 or 15.
Aww.
And he just seemed, he seemed incredibly dedicated to music. And of course, he wanted to express himself on the guitar. But the thing that I found really inspiring about getting to know him over the years was that he was really trying to evolve into a real composer, craftsman, musician, not just a guitar noodler. And that's kind of been my quest throughout my life. For me, the guitar is very much, it's a means, it's not the end. So you have to play your music on something in order for it to get heard. And the guitar is a wonderful instrument, but I've never been a guitar nerd. I've never been someone who sits and obsesses about guitars and woods and all that kind of stuff, which may seem surprising because I've been playing the guitar almost my entire life, but I play other instruments, and I think of myself very much as a musician composer, and the guitar part of it is, like I say, it's a means to an end.
Yeah, so you just mentioned you play lots of other instruments. Do you find the guitar's the easiest instrument to express yourself on? Because I saw in an interview you said that it's amazing because you can sound like a 5-piece band on one instrument.
Well, that is the wonderful thing about the instrument, is that probably the only two instruments that there are really that you can be as sort of, well, covering all the bases as you can this way are the guitar and keyboard instruments. So like the piano or, well, especially the piano. The piano was really conceived of as sort of the descendant of the harpsichord, and both of those instruments were meant to be able to cover all the bases if you wanted. But the nice thing about the piano is that it had the dynamic range that the harpsichord couldn't possibly have. And so you're able to get all the nuance that you could really of the softs and louds and all that kind of stuff that you could have an orchestra. And with a guitar, you have 6 strings, and you can play harmonies, you can play bass lines, you can play inner voices, you can play melodies. There's so much you can do on really a very small instrument, really. That's really quite amazing.
It's incredible. Now let's go straight back to while ago, a couple of years, you first studied philosophy. At
Yeah, well,
at what
yeah.
point did you realise, oh, maybe I don't want to find out the meaning of life, I want to be a full-time musician?
Well, I guess it's when I realized life doesn't really mean anything.
It's a bit dark, right, Tom?
No, I think that's actually it's a pretty positive way to look at life. Life just
Doesn't mean
enjoy
anything,
your life.
just shrug it
Just
off.
enjoy your life. Just enjoy your life, and just be a good person, and all that kind of stuff. Everything else is just accidental. When people try to bring all kinds of meaning into all of our activities, I think things get way too complicated. But
Good turnaround.
yeah, but I thought what I did was I did a music degree, but I also was taking a lot of philosophy courses, so I decided to turn my degree into basically a double major. So but to be brutally honest, I haven't touched the philosophical side of my studies since then. I just focused totally on being a musician, and so for me it was a concurrent thing. But a lot of it was just that I think I was just I'm one of those people who really lives in his head, and I consider things very carefully, and I'm more of an introvert, really. So I've never been a party animal. I've never had a million friends. I'm just one of those people who is content with life not being so huge and complicated. And I think the philosophical side of things was a way to sort of look at the world around me, and to try to understand, I guess, more about sort of the scientific and intellectual side of what we're here on Earth doing, rather than the spiritual side. So yeah.
Do you think maybe... Yeah, sorry.
Go ahead.
Do you think maybe that's part of the reason why you are a musician, being an introvert, and maybe a bit different, like looking at the world a bit differently? I find often musicians are a bit like that, and the way they express themselves is through their music.
Well, sure. I think I've always been a really easy person to get along with, despite the fact that I'm not the most outgoing person in the world. But I think what music has done for me, what it really helped me do, was come out of myself. Because when I was younger, I was very sort of, I kind of cut myself off from the world a lot of the time. And it wasn't like I was aloof or didn't enjoy people. I just, there was just too much to think about and too much to do. And I only really wanted to hang out with people if they were as interested in things as I felt interested. Not that they wouldn't have to be smart or anything. They just had to be able to think that things were really cool and what was cool about certain things. And one of the things that really attracted me in general from the time I was young was the whole idea of how sound is just so we have such a visceral and such an important relationship with sound. I mean, I remember hearing an interview with an actress many years ago. I forget her name now, but she talked about how she had battled deafness, and she had gone through surgeries and all this kind of stuff to keep her hearing. And my mother sort of did the same thing. My mother had a congenital defect where she had to have artificial bones put in her ears so she could continue to hear into adulthood. And
Wow.
And both of those people, both my mother and this actress whose name I forget, said, man, really, I think if I had a choice, would you rather be blind or deaf? I think I'd rather be blind. And the thought of it, putting it that way seemed, well, why does it have to be one or the other? But I got the point, was that the idea of living without sound, without beautiful sound, was almost too much to bear. And especially when you're somebody like me who's really gotten so into sound that I, studied the heck out of the theoretical and harmonic principles of how sound works, and, all the physical aspects of it, and, the physics aspects of it. And I'm really fascinated with how sound works. And I have a lot of students to whom I teach theory and harmony one-on-one. And so that's, I think, that the thing that's different about my relationship with music is that I'm sort of in love with everything about music, and the guitar the guitar playing is just one very important aspect of that love of music.
Wow, thanks for sharing that with us.
Yeah, you bet.
So we're just talking about sound, hearing things. First song you learnt on guitar?
Thank You for Letting Me Be Myself Again by Sly and the Family Stone.
That has a killer bass line to it.
Yeah,
you should be playing that on bass.
Well, it's got this really. It's basically just one guitar riff over and over again, right?
Yeah.
But I was like 8, and I had the single, and don 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 don
Yeah.
don 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 don, and so it's only 2 bars of music or something, but but as long as you can play those 2 bars, you can play the whole song. And for an 8-year-old to figure it out and to play that 9th chord up on the 7th fret, that was hard. And so I felt pretty proud of myself.
So did you? You should. Did you figure that out by yourself, or have you had lessons as a kid? Or were you all self-taught?
No, I was a completely intuitive musician as a child. I just really took to the guitar early, and my older brother, he's 6 years older than me. He and I both sort of started learning at the same time, and the fact that he was a teenager meant that he was surrounded by a lot of kids at school who were learning guitar, and then he joined bands, and he played guitar and he played bass in different bands, just garage bands.
Yeah.
And so he would come home and show me, well, here's how you play an E chord, and here's how you play an A minor chord, and here's how you play a D chord. So he was my first guitar teacher. But then, he quickly decided to just go to 4-string bass. So everything else about
to the
guitar,
dark side.
Yeah, that's right. the deep side.
Yeah.
So from that point on, I think I really just started to intuit a lot of it, and then I finally, when I got a piano when I was in my early teens, I figured out how the harmonies worked and why the guitar harmony worked the way it did. It was a lot easier to figure it out on the piano.
So who are these major influences as you were growing up that kind of, led you to having the life in music and not becoming a doctor or a chef?
Yeah. Well, I'd say my favorite musicians growing up were, early on, there were probably, like a lot of people, bands like the Beatles and Led Zeppelin and all those kinds of things. And then in my teens, I started discovering a lot of unusual, off the beaten path kind of stuff. I grew up in Montreal. So Montreal, being a French-speaking city in an otherwise mostly English-speaking continent, had this interesting music scene, which was a mixture of everything, American music, British music, all kinds of stuff, plus a homegrown French language scene. So, but ironically, there were acts from like Britain that were huge in Quebec and nowhere else.
Really?
Like Gentle, yeah. There's this band called Gentle Giant, this sort of ultra progressive rock band when I was a teenager, and they used to fill the hockey forum or the football stadium, and then they'd go to Toronto down the road and they'd play a small club. For whatever reason, Quebec just took to them. They were like gods, and their music was so intricate and intense and amazing that it had a profound influence on me, to the point where I sit here and I actually try to figure out guitar reductions of some of their tunes, and I would love to record a few of them, because they're incredible pieces of music. So they were huge.
So they're obviously still influences. Have those influences changed as you've kind of, grown up, or?
Yeah, I certainly discovered a lot more of the kind of jazz world, like people like Keith Jarrett, the great piano player, and Pat Metheny, the great jazz guitarist. People like those were bridging gaps between kind of very intellectual, almost hard to listen to music with a more lyrical approach that would sort of bring this very amazing music into the mainstream to a certain extent. And I found people like that really inspiring, because they obviously came from a really important and serious music side, but they tried to create music that a lot of people would say, hey, this is actually very beautiful music. Whether or not I understand what's going on, that's not the important thing. It just has a strong emotional effect on me. So people like that became very important. Bruce Cockburn, the Canadian guitar player and songwriter I mentioned before, he was a huge influence. Mm-hmm. And then, but I also grew up in Montreal, which was a very funk, soul, R&B town. So
Okay.
I grew up listening to Stevie Wonder and Ray Charles and
Yes.
Tower of Power and the Bar-Kays and the Brothers Johnson and all these people that, you know, those were huge. That was my favorite music growing up.
All the legends. Hey, look, I don't know what, like, kind of talking about mainstream music. Well, in Australia here, it's very much DJing and edited music with all, like, the bass and, you know, the cool party hard stuff. As a fingerstyle guitarist, do you kind of just go along with that? Is it hard to, you know, get your music heard when so many people are wanting... Because fingerstyle is such raw, you know, emotional music, and then there's like the doof partying music all about, like, you know, getting a girl and getting drunk. How do you stand apart?
Well, I think that there are multiple publics. Okay, so a good case in point. I go to Europe. I go to Europe a lot. I play in Europe a lot. I'm leaving for Europe on Sunday, in fact, for almost a month, and I occasionally do something stupid like put on the radio or the television, which is really dangerous, and listen to some of the music that gets played. Now, there's all
Bad move.
There's all the EDM stuff, which some of which is really cool. I actually quite like a lot of the EDM stuff that is inventive and lyrical. Some of the stuff that's so formulaic, I just think, okay, you're just supposed to bop your body around to it. You're not really listening to it as a cultural event, you know?
Yeah.
So that's one thing. But then, you know, you flip the channel and in Germany, there's this stuff called Deutsche Schlager. I don't know if you know what that means,
No.
but Schlager literally means hits. But the thing is, when they use the German word, it usually means this bizarre form of music that you maybe have some sort of cognate in Australia, kind of music for people of a certain age, maybe who I don't know how to characterize it. In Germany, it's basically a lot of gray-haired ladies really like this stuff, and it's 3 chords. It's very simple. There's usually some cute, much younger man singing the music to these very older ladies.
Oh no!
And yeah, it's very strange, and it's like a weird kind of you would expect this to sort of fit in with kind of like 21st century lederhosen kind of culture, you know. So there's that public.
Okay.
And there's the EDM public, and then there's the public who likes blues, and there's the public who likes really heavy rock and roll, and then there's the public that, you know, I mean, people like me and Callum and Andy McKee and a bunch of us, we all play in Europe regularly, and we get big crowds and we get lots of support. So, like I say, there are multiple publics, and sometimes they overlap. There's kind of a Venn diagram that happens, and so, you know. And ironically, 2 years ago, I got contacted by, you may know who Sesh'n and Grosso and people like that are.
Yeah.
They're former members of the Swedish House Mafia. Sesh'n and Grosso and oh gosh, why can't I remember his name? Axwell? Yeah, Axwell. We're doing an album
with
together.
names. I can't help you.
It's okay. Anyway, 2 of the 3 members of the Swedish House Mafia were doing a duet album, and their manager got in touch with me and said that, you know, the guys are huge fans of yours, and
Wow.
they'd really like you to demo some ideas. And they wrote me and said, oh yeah, they hear the tunes we like the most, you know, and there was all these amazing. I was amazed that they were that into the music, and they said, you know, your harmonic sense is so strong, and you think of harmonies that we would never consider. And so I sent them a bunch of demos for their duet album. They ended up not using them, but I thought it was pretty cool that, you know, I mean, I've been at this for a long time, and then here are these kids, you know, who are in the midst of this kind of crazy fame that they have.
Yeah.
Calling me up and saying, hey, you know, I was living in China at the time, so I'm getting these emails from Beverly Hills for the manager of these 2 guys in Sweden while I'm living in Beijing, asking me to demo tunes. It was like surreal.
Oh,
but
congratulations.
Oh, thanks. But they were saying, yeah, could you like demo between 131 and 137 beats per minute? It was like so specific.
Sure.
So,
of course I can.
The cool thing is I got a bunch of good ideas out of it that'll be on my next record. So There you go.
So talking about like all the current music, you released your first song on cassette. I think that is the coolest thing. It is so cool.
Well, I'll tell you, even at the time, there was nothing cool about it.
Oh, do you still have a copy of it?
Oh, I archive a few copies of things, because you have to. You shouldn't let your history go down the drain. But I probably have about 5 copies in a box somewhere.
Oh, that's cool. I think vinyl is cool. And then like I read that you had it on cassette, and I was just like, nah, he's just taken it to a whole new level.
Yeah, well, back in the 80s, that's what you had to do. It was the only way that you could afford to release music a lot of the time when you're an independent artist back then. I mean, vinyl was too expensive. CDs were relatively new and incredibly expensive at the time. I mean, CDs were $6 each to manufacture.
No
Now
way.
they're $1, but back then they were so expensive. And so yeah, it was a whole different world.
Yeah.
It's a whole different
How
world.
times have changed. Hey,
Yeah.
the names of your songs, I love them. Like, how do you come up with them? Like, Klim Bim and, I don't know, it's so cool. What do they mean?
Well,
is it
well,
is it the secret guitar language? And Callum's like, I see what you did there.
Yeah. No, it's my silly sense of humor. I have a very sort of Monty Python influenced sense of humor, and but one of my favorite guitarists growing up was an American guitarist named Leo Kottke, and Leo has this talent for giving his mostly instrumental tunes the most ridiculous names, like names like Vaseline Machine Gun and
Got a
a
catch
trout. A trout toward noon. What does that even mean, right?
I don't want to think about it.
Yeah. So, he even did a medley of 2 old cowboy songs. One of them was Tumblin' Tumbleweed, and the other one was I forget. But he called the medley, for whatever reason, he called it the Spanish Entomologist. So I mean,
Okay.
he's got a good imagination. So he was a big influence on. Yeah, sometimes you should really give your tunes just whatever kind of bizarre name you want, because if you're writing instrumental music, you can call them whatever you want. And I'm not going to just call them something like Reflections Number 5. That's just like, that's
Symphony
such a
4.
Yeah, that's right. Opus 5. So early on, I wrote this basically kind of a rock thrash solo guitar tune, and I named it after a dish at a Chinese restaurant around the corner. Originally it was called Mango Tofu Gobi Fish, but I just shortened it to Gobi Fish, things like that. Klim Bim is a German word that means junk store, literally. That's so,
Why would you name your song that?
because it's
I made an awesome
stupid.
song. What am I going to call it? Junk store.
Absolutely, partly because it's just stupid, and I'm a big fan of stupid.
Oh, I love that. That is so cool. So do you ever write songs for others, or is it like, does anyone ever come to you and be like, hey, can you chuck me out a tab? I want to play it.
Well, I mean, you mean specifically write for someone else?
Yeah.
Well, I've written pieces on demand for like radio dramas and films and television shows and things like that.
That's cool.
But it hasn't really happened that people have come up to me and say, "Hey, I play guitar too. Can I commission you to write a tune?" That hasn't really happened. But what has happened is there are orchestras around the world that have approached me and said, can you come play with the orchestra and we'll orchestrate something, or you can orchestrate something, and so things like that happen, and that's kind of cool.
Yeah. You can write me out a tab and I'll have it in an hour. Doubt it. Hey, what challenges would a musician face that maybe somebody working a 9-to-5 job wouldn't have? Just
there's good things and bad things about what I do for a living. I think it's like any job. There are advantages and disadvantages. The biggest disadvantage to being a full-time musician, no matter what area you're in, is you're a self-employed person, so you never really know how much money you're going to have from week to week or month to month, and that can be stressful. If things have been slow and you're wondering where the heck you're going to find, the mortgage money from or whatever. But at other times you are flush and you feel really good and proud and everything's cool. And so as long as you're responsible, you don't just spend all your money on blow every time you get it or whatever, then you're going to be all right.
Yeah.
And what I really like about what I do is that there's, a fantastic amount of freedom involved. I can live wherever I want to. I can work as hard as I want or as not hard as I want, and nobody's going to fire me. And those are all good things. The hard thing these days, and I've been a full-time musician now for almost 30 years, and the one single thing that's changed the most is that it's really hard to get people to invest in their favorite artists, and by that I mean support them. Like actually, spend a couple of bucks on a recording. It's so hard now. It's almost like you're begging people to listen to your music, and then you're begging them to take you seriously. And it's really strange since the advent of the internet. Now there's just so much availability and so much quantity of music, and also people have gotten out of the habit of paying for it, even though legally they should, but they don't. And it's that part's really rough, because I kind of felt like after the year 2000, basically about half my revenue stream dried right up. So I've had to adapt like crazy, and then young artists coming up, it's like basically you have to just counsel them to, well, just tour your face off and tour until you can't stand it anymore.
Yeah. So like
that's rough.
You've been in the time when like you release songs on cassette, as we spoke about before, and now you've got this whole world of social media, and you've got like a Facebook page, and I think you've adapted really well to that and the YouTube side of it. But do you feel like the internet's is it a big advantage to musicians? Because it gets your music out there, but like you said, it doesn't get the money.
Well, that's the biggest problem, is the monetization angle of it is really is hard. The amazing thing about it, and I mean, this is coming from somebody, I was the second person that I personally knew with an email address. So I was a really early adopter of the internet. And
good job.
Thanks. And when I was still signed to a record deal back in the 90s when the World Wide Web started up, I actually learned how to update my own website that Sony, my record company, did for me. And they said, my God, you're the only artist who actually updates his own website that we have on the label, So I've always been a very, very DIY musician. So the internet and I got along fine. The thing that I warned people about when Napster happened was that it wouldn't just be a matter of people stopping to pay for CDs or whatever. It would be a devaluation of the worth of music in general. And that unfortunately came true. I mean, it's by percentages or inflation or whatever, that the price of a ticket to go see a live show has hardly gone up in the last 30 years. Mm-hmm. I mean, really. I mean, if you ticket is like compared to, say, the price of a house or the price of a car or the price of a meal at a restaurant. I mean, the live music has become quite static, with the exception of, say, a Dinosaur act from the 70s doing a reunion tour and having $500 VIP seats, and people, a bunch of 55-year-olds are willing to pay it.
Be nice. I saw Ozzy Osbourne the other week.
There you go. So, I mean, there's that whole world, but I mean, those acts have been around since, the Earth's crust cooled. So that's one thing. That's one thing. But I mean, for younger musicians, and I'm not a younger musician anymore. For younger musicians, it's a hell of a thing to, like, when people write me and say, what do I need to do to be successful? I say, well, define successful.
Yeah.
If you want to be well known, great. Being well known doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be wealthy, but and back in the old days, it usually did. But there's a few of my colleagues who've done very well. People like Andy McKee and John Gom. Right. They've had these.
Tommy Emmanuel.
He's
our fellow Australian.
That's right. Tommy Emmanuel really, though, he did it the old school way by touring his brains out. I mean, I've never met anybody who works harder than Tommy who performs more concerts. And I mean, personally, I couldn't even stand to do that. I don't know how he does it, but he's just never home. He just lives on the road and somehow manages to survive. I don't know how he does it. I'm sure he's making lots of money, but I don't know how his body takes it because he's not a young man anymore, and it's hard.
He's
it's really hard
unstoppable.
it's hard to tour that much. Yeah, he just played here in Halifax a couple of weeks ago. He's everywhere. But that's not the kind of career I really want myself. I would rather have some home time, and I teach a lot, and I mix it up. I try to not just do one thing. But the thing is, Tommy really did it the old school way before YouTube and all that kind of stuff. He was already a very well known quantity by the early 2000s. After sort of really going for it as a solo performer for about 10 years. Before that, of course, he was like a music director for Olivia Newton-John and all these people. I mean,
I did not know that.
Yeah, he was her music director. I mean, he's had a long career.
Wow.
I mean, he's in his early 60s now. He's had a long career working for all kinds of people, being like a hired gun on the electric and stuff like that. But then he realized that the only way he was going to have a future, really, as an artist was to go solo and to do the solo acoustic thing. And it's worked out really well for him. But people like Andy and John Gom, Andy McKee and John Gom, have really taken advantage of the viral video phenomenon. Of course, nobody knows if and when that's ever going to happen. It's a crapshoot. But those two out of many of us have really benefited the best from the viral video phenomenon. Yeah.
Yeah. So, like, you mentioned those guys, and they're, like, friends of yours. Can I say that? They're friends?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course.
They're massive. Are you used to, like, just being mates with these people? Is that, like...
Oh, yeah. I knew them all before they were, 10 million views on YouTube.
Do you ever get starstruck by anyone?
Oh,
Will Smith?
Well, it's so funny. I've met people that you probably would never have heard of that I had rock star moments around. Like, there's a Swedish musician named Alla Müller who he's an amazing multi-instrumentalist. He put out this amazing record back in the 90s with a female singer named Lena Villemark. And I met him at a festival in Scotland, and I was like, holy shit, Alla Müller. Oh my God. But I came this close to meeting Sting once. I think.
Oh no!
I think I would have soiled myself if I had. But anyway, I've been in the same room with him a few times, and I've been in the same room with people like Stevie Wonder. But I think the only kind of I think the only sort of people that I've met that were really gigantic were people like Celine Dion and David Foster, and I'm not even a fan of their music, but they're on the same label as me. We're at the same party,
Yeah, that's just how it works. Hey, we were talking about Tommy touring before. You're heading on tour on Sunday for you. Just tell me about the tour life. Are there any people you've really met on tour or crazy moments that just never forget?
Well, there's lots of them. I mean, mostly for me, the thing that really I find fascinating about what I do is that when I was a little kid, I was one of these nerdy kids who would just pore over the atlas and look at maps of faraway lands, and I would imagine what it was like in those places, and I would really want to go to them. So I got very into my grade 4 project about Australia. I really did. I remember working very carefully on my map of Australia, and I remember memorizing the names of all the different states and all the different wildlife.
See, to be honest, I don't even know the states of Australia. I am so bad with geography; it's ridiculous. So you could teach me something about Australia.
But there's only a few of them.
I know, but I'm so bad at it.
Okay, there's Queensland. All right. There's Northern Territory. Okay.
There's South Australia.
South Australia. There's New South Wales. There's
Canberra. Is that a state? That's a state.
Canberra is your capital.
Yeah.
See, I learned that in grade 4 too. But it's probably a city state. It's probably like a federal district, right?
Maybe.
Anyway, and there's the western ones. There's Western Australia, right?
Yep.
and I think that's almost all of them.
Tasmania. Don't forget Tasmania. They get upset.
Of course. And the capital is Hobart. See?
You know more than me. Anyway, go on, yeah.
So anyway, whatever. So I was really into the geography when I was a kid, so I thought, well, wouldn't it be nice to do something where I got to see these places? And so be careful what you wish for, because I never really thought I'd be a touring musician. I thought if I did music, I thought it would be as a composer, maybe, I did a degree in music, and I thought, well, maybe I'll write for film or television or whatever. But I sort of fell into performing willy-nilly. I really didn't expect to be, I really thought there'd be no audience for a solo guitarist up on stage playing original music, even though I had all this music I'd written. And then I realized that people really dug it. So, well, okay, I guess I'll do that. And as a result, I get invited, like I'm flying to Germany on Sunday, then I go to Austria.
Watch out for the grey-haired ladies.
Exactly. And then I come back to Canada for a festival, then I go to China, then I come back to Canada, then I go to India, then I go back to Europe, and it's a pretty full life, and I get to see a lot of amazing things. So for me, just seeing some of these places, like being in Calcutta or being in Bangalore or being in Beijing or being in Melbourne, or all these places, really it really tickles me. I really love it.
Yeah, so what can people expect, like, from a live show? All your shows different? Do you kind of go out there with the idea that this is what it's going to be like and just, like, stick to plan? Or do some things just happen when an audience member says something, just the whole show just changes?
Oh, yeah, it can be very spontaneous. I certainly have a group of tunes that I know that people expect me to play every show.
Do you get sick of them?
No, fortunately, I've got so much music that I've written that the fact that there are 4 or 5 that I sort of have to play every show, it's perfectly okay, and they're tunes that I like playing anyway, so it's all good. But I've written like 180 tunes for guitar over the years, and there's like all this repertoire in my head that I could pull up almost at will. I mean, there's maybe a few tunes that are getting a bit rusty by now, but. And very often I'll just get up on stage and I'll say, you know what, I decided no plan. What do you want to hear? And people just yell out tunes, and if I can hear them, I play the tune, And I'll just say to them, sometimes I'll say, you know what, I love that tune. I honestly haven't played it in 5 years, but I'll give it a try. And people really, really appreciate it. So, and it keeps me sharp, and it keeps me from developing Alzheimer's too early and all that kind of stuff. So it's all good. It's all good.
Definitely. Hey, I think there's something about, like, I don't know, I just love watching guitarists, because watching that whole finger picking style, or even if it's just going down the street watching a busker, there's just something so real about guitar. I just love it. Yeah,
it's well, the thing about it is that it's a very personal instrument. You hold it close to your body, but then it's also very visual. You can see everything the person's doing with both hands, and that's what makes it so unique. It's not like watching a piano player or whatever. You can really appreciate what the person's doing.
Yeah. Hey, look, thanks so much for chatting to me. Your nighttime, my morning. It's been amazing.
Oh, it's a pleasure, Hannah. Thanks for having me on your show.
I learned so much. Come to Adelaide soon, please.
Yeah, it's been way too long since I've been in Australia. I want to go back.
I'll see you then, unless I spontaneously decide to go to Canada. But
there you go.
I'll see you in Adelaide.
Welcome here anytime.
Thanks so much, Don.
All right, Hannah.
See you later. Bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.